In this video, we will be covering MySQL procedures and the use of the CaseWhen statement in MySQL. Procedures are a type of SQL routine, and they are used if we have fairly complex queries that we would like to store on the server without writing the query out every time. Procedures are created using the create procedure statement, and there are a couple of different types of procedures that we can write. Let us get to showing you how procedures are written. The most simplest form of procedure is a procedure that takes no inputs and provides us with no output, but simply executes a query that is stored on the procedure. In this case, I'm going to be using the classic models database, and I'm going to create a procedure based on a query on the classic models database. For instance, let's say I have a query such as follows. Let's say I had such an SQL query, and I would like to execute this SQL query multiple times, as many times as I would like, whenever I would choose. One can do this by creating a procedure from this query and storing it on a server. The way one converts this query to a procedure and stores it on the server is through the use of the create procedure statement, such as create procedure Very simply, I would precede the query with the create procedure statement, and after the create procedure statement, I would have to name the procedure in this state. In this procedure, I name the procedure customers and num of orders with an open close parentheses. And then when I execute this, you will notice down here that the procedure is executed successfully, the create procedure statement is executed successfully, and 0 rows are affected. Now, once I refresh my schemas list, you will notice that I have an arrow next to the stored procedures. If I click on this, you will notice that a procedure called customers and num orders has been created and stored in the server. To invoke this procedure, what I would need to do is type in or use the call statement. Call in the name of the procedure followed by parentheses invokes this query that's stored on the server and returns the result. This is the simplest form of procedure there is. Procedures can also have or take inputs. They can have multiple inputs. Here's an example of a procedure using a parameter. Let me show you how it works. In this case, I am going to have a condition on this procedure. Since the outline of the procedure is the same, I'm just going to copy and paste the previous procedure, and I'm just going to modify this. I'm going to modify the procedure name. So now I'm going to be creating a procedure customers and num orders in country. This procedure is going to take an input, and this input is going to be the country that I want these customers to be in. This country input is going to be variable character input, and it's going to potentially be 10 characters long. And so this is a procedure, it's a new procedure that takes an input called the country and the country can be variable character 10 characters long. And so what I can do is I can use the data coming into this procedure like so, where the country of the customer is equal to the country or the input that is coming into the procedure. So if I execute and store this on the server, you will see that the procedure is successfully created and stored on the server. If I refresh this, I have customers and num orders in country. To invoke the procedure, all I would have to do is as follows. And I would have to specify the country. For instance, let's say the USA. And you will see that I'm getting the one customer who is in the USA who has more than 5 orders. The third type of procedure can take inputs but also give you outputs. Let's say I don't want this printed out, but I want the result returned and present in some variable within the executable, within the SQL environment that I maybe want to refer to later on. The way I would do that is I would declare an out variable and I would store the result of the query, the output of the query, into that output variable. I'm going to do that as follows. Taking the similar structure from earlier, I'm going to have an input and I'm going to have an output. And in this case, let's say I want the number of orders of customers in a country of my choice. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the output is going to be something called num orders, and this is going to be integer data. I have a procedure called number of orders of customers. The input is the country, so the country of my choice, and the output is going to be the number of orders. So my query is going to select a count of order number from customers where the country of interest is the country input and my output has to be num orders, and so this count has to go and be stored into the variable num orders. One thing I have to do to get the number of orders of customers in a country is I have to remove the group by. If I have the group by in place, I'm going to get multiple results because I'm going to aggregate for each customer the number of orders they might have placed. But I want the results for the whole country, so I have to get rid of the group by. Now when I execute this, when I execute the procedure is successfully executed. When I have to invoke the procedure, I type the following out. I'm calling the procedure, counting the number of customers in the USA, and I'm calling the procedure, I'm counting the number of orders of customers in the USA, and I'm storing the result in num orders. When I execute this procedure, it has successfully executed, but I don't see a result. That's because the result, which is the number of orders placed by customers in the USA, has been stored in num orders. So to get that number, all I would need to do is select at orders, and so 112 orders placed by customers in the USA. If I want to change this, I can say, for instance, the UK, orders were placed by customers in the UK. And so this is how I can write a procedure that takes inputs and also returns outputs. The next thing I would like to cover are case statements. Think of case statements as if-else statements in the SQL context. Case statements contain when, then, and else statements as ways to check for multiple conditions and to determine what to do if each condition is true. Each case statement finishes off with an end as for the name of the new column. So let's take a look at an example of a CaseWhen statement. Let's use the text database. For instance, let us take for instance the item table. We have items and they have a primary key item number, item name, item type, and item color. Item type is not a string, but just a letter, E, N, C, and F. These actually mean something. And so rather than just leave item type as it is, let's write a query so that we display item type with the whole world, E being equipment, N being navigation, C being clothing, and F being furniture. To do that in the form of a query, here's how we would do it. Select item name and let's say item color. Now, here's how we would use a case statement. We would say case when item type is equal to E, then consider it equipment. So in this query, I have selected two columns, item name and item type, item color. The CaseWhen statement is evaluating the item type column, and if the item type column has the value E, then display equipment. If the item type column has an N, then display navigation, C for clothing, F for furniture. If none of those are true, display not applicable. This ends the CaseWhen statement. The end clause ends the CaseWhen statement, and give that column a name called type of item. If I run this query, you will notice I have a column called type of item where E is replaced by equipment, N with navigation, C with clothing, and F with furniture. This is one way one can use the CaseWhen clause. CaseWhen statements can also be used or combined with built-in functions. Here is an example of using CaseWhen clauses with built-in functions. We're still going to work with the item table. In this case, I'm going to count the number of items of each type. Here's how that works. In this case, the CaseWhen clause is used to pick specific rows. I have counted the number of times item number shows up when the item type is F and C and N and E, and what I've done is create multiple columns: furniture items, clothing items, navigation items, and equipment items based on the use of the CaseWhen statement. These are the two ways that one can use CaseWhen statements. There are other applications of the CaseWhen statement that are possible but are not going to be covered. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.